Canadian Bulldog from Wrestling Merchandise and Memories. That's merchandiseandmemories.com. And today we're counting down the top 50 Ric Flair rivalries. Woo! To be clear, these are all storyline rivalries and don't necessarily mean that there was any real heat outside the ring. So people with real-life beefs with Flair aren't included, even though some of the names listed below also have had behind-the-scenes feuds with him. In counting down the top 50 Ric Flair rivalries, we considered the following criteria. How prominent was the rivalry? What type of stage did it play out on? How memorable were the matches or segments? And how much did the rivalry do to advance either person's career? Just before we get started, wanted to remind you that July is Rivalries Month at Wrestling Merchandise and Memories, in which we do top 50 lists such as this one, and also deep dives into some of wrestling's most memorable or interesting feuds. Check it all out at bit.ly/rivalriesmonth. Number 50, towards the end of his active wrestling career, WWE Hall of Famer Buddy Rogers feuded with Ric Flair in the Carolinas, both for bragging rights and each man's claim to the Nature Boy nickname. Flair defeated Rogers cleanly in 1978, one of Buddy's final matches before retiring. Number 49, when Vince Russo took over WCW in 1999, one of his goals was to build storylines based on reality. Shane Douglas had been dogging Dick Flair for years from the confines of ECW, but when both men were in the company at the same time, a heated rivalry seemed to make sense. Number 48, Ric Flair clashed with WWE Hall of Famer Bobo Brazil early in his career, particularly in the Carolinas. Flair defeated Brazil to win his very first United States Championship back in 1977, setting the stage for a career where Nate was covered in championship gold. Number 47, Ric Flair was dogged by WWE Hall of Famer The Ultimate Warrior during his second WWF World title run in 1992. Warrior challenged Flair for the belt several times on the house show circuit, and the two were poised to meet in a tag team match at Survivor Series before Warrior suddenly quit the company. Number 46, in 2002, Chris Jericho appeared unexpectedly on Monday Night Raw, he'd been on SmackDown at the time, and targeted Ric Flair, leaving him laying in the center of the ring. They then clashed at SummerSlam that year, with Jericho being the first person to submit to Flair's Figure 4 leg lock in many years. Number 45, one of Ric Flair's most persistent challengers to his WCW World title in 1991 was the 7'7" El Gigante. Believe it or not, there were rumors at the time that WCW Vice President Jim Herd was going to give Gigante the championship. Number 44, Ric Flair's Four Horsemen faction and the Giant's Dungeon of Doom group had a casual pact as allies until the Giant challenged Flair in 1996 and then captured his WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Number 43, the third consecutive Giant on our list and easily the most famous, WWE Hall of Famer Andre the Giant battled Ric Flair in 1977 in the Carolinas in both singles and tag team matches. Number 42, although the Four Horsemen's feud with the New World Order never really took center stage during the Monday Night Wars, it was always bubbling just below the surface. During the rivalry, Hulk Hogan spray-painted a mohawk into Ric Flair's head, while ex-horseman Kurt Hennig defected to the NWO, and Syxx dressed up like Nate. Number 41, while serving as the traveling world champion in the NWA, Ric Flair visited Memphis several times and clashed with WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler, including a match that drew record attendance at the Mid-South Coliseum in September 1985. These two also locked horns on Monday Night Raw some 19 years later. Number 40, although there was also real-life heat between the two during Vince Russo's WCW run, there was also an interesting on-screen rivalry in which Russo turned Ric Flair's son David against him and conspired to shave Nature Boy's head following a match. Number 39, a feud between Ric Flair and WWE Hall of Famer Diamond Dallas Page began at Spring Stampede 1999 when Page was the surprise winner of a WCW World title match in a four-way featuring Flair. Later that year, a family feud of sorts emerged with Rick and David Flair at odds with Diamond Dallas and Kimberly Page. Number 38, In March 1991, Flair defended his WCW World title at the WCW New Japan Super Show against the IWGP champion Tatsumi Fujinami. Fujinami won both belts, but according to the NWA, not WCW rules. The complicated situation was settled at Super Brawl 91 when Flair defeated Fujinami by pinfall. Number 37, a locker room confrontation between then World Tag Team Champions Doom, Butch Reed and WWE Hall of Famer Ron Simmons, and Flair and fellow Horseman Arn Anderson led to a series of tag team and singles matches between them in late 1990. Number 36, WWE Hall of Famer Bob Orton Jr. was portrayed as a family friend and tag team partner of Flair, even holding Ric's daughter Megan on national television. But when Harley Race placed a bounty on Flair's head, Orton, along with Dick Slater, was quick to shift allegiances. Number 35, about 2 decades after feuding with his father, Ric Flair embraced Randy Orton as the future world champion in Evolution. But by mid-2004, Flair, along with Triple H and Batista, decided to kick Orton out of the group, leading to a rivalry that was still apparent on television even a decade later on Raw. Number 34, when Ric Flair returned to the WWF in late 2001, he was revealed to be the company's co-owner, which didn't sit particularly well with his partner, Vince McMahon. This ignited a rivalry that included a featured match at the 2002 Royal Rumble. Number 33, at the Great American Bash in 1989, WWE Hall of Famer The Great Muta aligned himself with Terry Funk in an effort to put Flair out of action and to take away his NWA World title. Rick formed an uneasy alliance with Sting, and the four battled singles and tag team matches until the end of that year. Number 32, this rivalry began in 1993 when WWE Hall of Famer Stone Cold Steve Austin was stunning Steve Austin. He and Hollywood Blonde partner Brian Pillman often targeted Flair and made fun of his age. It took a good 9 years, but Nate got his revenge in WWE, turning on Austin while acting as Raw general manager. Number 31, a decade after the two briefly teamed in the WWF, WWE Hall of Famer The Undertaker and Ric Flair faced off against each other at WrestleMania X8. Leading up to the match, the dead man attacked Flair's son David and injured his best friend Arn Anderson, leading to a classic grudge match. Number 30, Ric Flair and WWE Hall of Famer Arn Anderson are longtime friends and tag team partners. But in 1995, tired of always coming to Flair's aid, the Enforcer split from his teammate and faced off against each other in WCW. The two quickly managed to put their differences aside and team up again. Number 29, while Ric Flair and WWE Hall of Famer Blackjack Mulligan were friends outside the business and even owned a territory together briefly, they feuded extensively in the Mid-Atlantic area during the late 1970s. Mulligan even went so far as to wear Flair's famous robe to the ring and then tear it to shreds. Number 28, WWE Hall of Famer Bret the Hitman Hart upset Ric Flair in October 1992 to win his first WWF World Championship in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. The two crossed paths again when Hart joined WCW in late 1997 and even engaged in a memorable match at Sold Out the following year. Number 27, WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley was able to use a real-life incident in which he and Ric Flair traded insults in their respective autobiographies into an in-ring feud in the WWE in the summer of 2006, which led to a memorable I Quit match at SummerSlam. 4 years later in TNA, the two briefly rekindled their feud. Number 26, shortly after regaining the WCW World title in 1991, Ric Flair defended his title against WWE Hall of Famer Scott Steiner during a live Clash of the Champions event. Almost 2 decades later, Big Papa Pump ripped into Flair on a live Nitro television interview. Number 25, during the early days of the Four Horsemen, Ric Flair and his teammates could often be looking across the ring at WWE Hall of Famers the Road Warriors. In fact, Flair defended his NWA World title against both Hawk and Animal during various matches on the Great American Bash Tour. Number 24, Nikita Koloff was already set to face Ric Flair for the NWA World title at Starrcade 86 before an injury to Magnum TA altered everyone's plans. Soon, a newly turned Koloff challenged Flair throughout the country. Number 23, when Ric Flair returned to WCW in 1993, WWE Hall of Famer Rick Rude targeted the Nature Boy in the ultimate battle between ladies' men. The Ravishing One defeated Flair for the NWA World Championship, which was a separate belt from the WCW title at that time. Number 22, Ron Garvin's Blue Collar Hero was an excellent contrast to Ric Flair's Life of the Party gimmick, and the two clashed in September of 1987. Garvin upset Flair to win the NWA World Championship and dropped it back to Flair a few months later at Starrcade. Number 21, WWE Hall of Famer Mr. Perfect started out as Ric Flair's executive consultant in the WWF, later turning against him and challenging Slick Rick to a loser leaves WWF match in early 1993, which Flair lost. Flair was betrayed again in WCW when Hennig turned on Flair to join the NWO. Number 20. In the late 1970s, Ric Flair and Wahoo McDaniel traded the Mid-Atlantic title back and forth in Jim Crockett Promotions. At one point, the dirtiest player in the game smashed McDaniel in the face with a broken table leg, legitimately injuring him because there was a piece of nail sticking out of the table leg. Number 19, things don't get much more personal than a son against his father, which is what happened in WCW twice over a 2-year period, mind you. The first time that David Flair turned on Rick, he was seduced by Torrie Wilson into helping the NWO. The second time was when Vince Russo became a father figure to David. Number 18, Ric Flair feuded with many members of WWE Hall of Famers the Von Erich family over the years, including brothers Mike, Kevin, and Kerry Von Erich while traveling through Texas. Number 17, WWE Hall of Famer Terry Funk was serving as a judge for a Ric Flair vs. Rick Steamboat match in 1989. After congratulating Rick on a hard-fought victory, Funk pile-drove him through a ringside table, igniting one of the more brutal rivalries in NWA history. Number 16, WWE Hall of Famer Edge ended up giving Ric Flair some of his toughest moments towards the end of his in-ring career. The Rated R superstar even spoofed Flair's road rage incident that happened during their rivalry, dressing up as his nemesis for a memorable vignette. Number 15, one of Ric Flair's all-time favorite opponents was WWE Hall of Famer Barry Windham, who wrestled to several 1-hour and even some 90-minute draws in the summer of 1986. The rivalry temporarily ended when Windham was recruited to join the Four Horsemen. Number 14, Magnum TA was one of the most popular wrestlers in Jim Crockett Promotions during the early 1980s, so it was only a matter of time before he crossed paths with Ric Flair. The feud may have gone longer than it did had it not been for the car accident that ended Magnum's career. Number 13, after returning to WCW in 1993, Ric Flair was placed in a world title match against WWE Hall of Famer Big Van Vader. Flair would have had to retire if he had lost their Starrcade encounter, and the two had a brutal match in which Flair won the gold. Number 12, WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels was able to enforce Ric Flair's retirement stipulation in WWE, well, for a little while at least, after the two met in an all-time classic at WrestleMania 24. Famously, Michaels mouthed that he was sorry before super-kicking Nature Boy into retirement. Number 11. In 1986, Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen became jealous of the cheers being heard by WWE Hall of Famers the Rock and Roll Express. After Ricky Morton defeated Flair in a non-title match, the Horsemen attacked him in a parking lot and broke his nose, accelerating their feud. Number 10. Ric Flair was the only member of Evolution that hadn't defected against WWE Hall of Famer Triple H, so it was surprising that when the game returned to action in 2005, he immediately turned on Flair following a tag team match. The two former friends engaged in a brutal series of matches. Number 9. Ric Flair and WWE Hall of Famer Randy Macho Man Savage feuded not once, but twice, and in two different companies. Flair lost his WWF World title to Savage in 1992, and they also traded the WCW World title back and forth several years later. Number 8. Decades before they participated in Celebrity Wife Swap, WWE Hall of Famer Roddy Piper and Ric Flair swapped the US title in Mid-Atlantic Wrestling in an early 1980s rivalry where each man tried to out-cheat each other. Things picked up in the WWF a decade later, with Piper disputing Flair's claim that he was the real world's champion. Number 7. Even discounting the out-of-the-ring backstory, this was a huge in-ring conflict with WWE Hall of Famer Eric Bischoff when he tried to disband the Four Horsemen and fire Ric Flair from WCW. In 1999, Bischoff gave Flair a haircut after a match, adding insult to injury. Number 6. In June 1983, WWE Hall of Famer Harley Race ended Ric Flair's very first NWA World title reign. Race put up a $25,000 bounty for any wrestler who could put Nature Boy out of action, collected by Bob Orton and Dick Slater. Flair then returned from injury and defeated Race. Number 5. WWE Hall of Famer Lex Luger was one of Ric Flair's most persistent challengers in the early 1990s. The Nature Boy began as the babyface and later turned heel, while Luger took the opposite route. Luger was also briefly a member of the Four Horsemen, which added fuel to the fire. Number 4. The legendary rivalry between Ric Flair and WWE Hall of Famer Ricky the Dragon Steamboat began in the early 1980s in the Mid-Atlantic region, with Steamboat tearing Flair's clothes off of him on television. The two later engaged in a classic 3-series match in 1989, trading the NWA World title back and forth. Number 3. WWE Hall of Famer Dusty Rhodes was the antithesis of Ric Flair's limousine-riding, Learjet-flying persona. Flair defeated Rhodes for his first NWA World title, and they traded the belts back and forth from there in a memorable series of matches. During the dying days of WCW, the two ended up on opposite sides for one last round in their feud. Number 2. The names Ric Flair and WWE Hall of Famer Hulk Hogan usher in images of one of wrestling's biggest dream matches, as both men stood atop their respective companies during the 1980s. They first began feuding in 1991 in the WWF, then carried it over to a series of pay-per-view grudge matches in WCW beginning in 1994, and even took their show on the road in Australia and TNA. And the number 1 Ric Flair rivalry? Arguably no one is linked as closely to Ric Flair's storied career as WWE Hall of Famer Sting, the icon who first clashed with the Nature Boy at the first Clash of the Champions in 1988. They would go on to trade the WCW World Championship, team and feud with each other, and they even took their rivalry briefly to TNA. What's more, the two men tangled on the first and last episode of WCW Monday Nitro, demonstrating how long their rivalry has truly lasted. So, what did you think? Which ones do we miss? Which ones do we misplace? Let us know in the comment section, and be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestling Merchandise and Memories for much more great content.